You were dumped by a successful husband earning $300,000 a year. Sorry, haha, suing is pointless. Saying that, my sister smirked looking at my face. It was supposed to be my baby shower, but she didn't care at all. But I couldn't just stay silent after being insulted like that. Do you think you can ruin my family and get away with it for free? Be prepared. I plan to demand a substantial amount of compensation from both you and my husband. As I glared at my sister, she seemed to mock me even more. Please do. You can have your compensation or whatever. It's nothing to me, as I have a husband earning $300,000 a year. What's $10,000 or $20,000 to us, right, honey? Saying that, my sister turned to look at my husband, who started trembling. As soon as our eyes met, he suddenly apologized. I'm sorry. The one most surprised by my husband's voice was my sister. Seizing the moment, I reached for something I had hidden in my pocket. When I pinned it to the front of my dress, my sister's face turned pale instantly. My name is Sarah, 32 years old. I'm a so-called working housewife, juggling both home and career. It's been 4 years since I married David. Whether these 4 years have been long or short, I personally felt it was quite a journey. We had struggled to conceive. From the start of our marriage, we wanted children. It was my dream to build a warm family with kids. But after we started our married life, I just couldn't get pregnant. We went to the hospital and got checked. There was nothing wrong. Despite the doctor's optimistic prognosis, we had to strive hard in our attempts to conceive for a long time. Finally, after 4 years, when I got pregnant, our joy was indescribable. Our baby was finally coming. Rubbing my belly, we thanked God countless times. I was working full-time then, but started reducing my workload, gradually preparing for maternity leave. My regular work was busy, and it was painful to let go of responsibilities, but what mattered most was the child in my belly. Fortunately, together, David and I earned a decent household income and had saved enough. David told me he'd work even harder from now on. He indeed worked 20% more, which worried me more than anything. As I entered the stable period, I took a leave from work 1 month before the due date to prepare for a return to my parents' home for the birth. Initially, David, who dislikes being alone, was reluctant, but he agreed, understanding it was all for the child. I'll miss you, Sarah. While I found David's attitude somewhat unreliable, it was also endearing. I vowed to fulfill my role as a pregnant woman for his sake. That's when I returned to my parents' home after a long time. Long time no see, Sarah. At my parents' home, there was my sister, Becky. I was shocked by her sudden appearance. We hadn't seen each other for almost 10 years. Not just in person, I didn't even know if she was alive. The same was true for our parents. 10 years ago, Becky had left home with a jobless man, a former bartender. Back then, Becky was so smitten with him that she spent all her savings and even dipped into our parents' money, resulting in them disowning her. For about 10 years, with no contact, I couldn't even tell her about my marriage or pregnancy. Her sudden appearance at our parents' house gave me an ominous feeling. We were never close as sisters, and seeing her now, more hardened after 10 years, I felt a sense of disgust. Sarah, are you pregnant? Your belly looks big. Yes, I'm almost in my final month. More importantly, where have you been all this time, sis? It's been 10 years since you left home like you were eloping. You didn't even contact us once. Well, I was disowned by Mom and Dad. They yelled at me never to show my face again. I couldn't come back. That's because you took money from the house, right? I know, and I've reflected on that. I said I would pay back the money, and that's why Mom and Dad allowed me to stay at home again. Maybe a daughter is always precious to them. What about the man you were with? I broke up with him a long time ago. He was a penniless guy who squandered my savings and even got into debt, then cheated on me with another woman. The look on my sister's face as she said this was fiercely intense. It wasn't the face of the sister I knew. She had always been badly behaved, but seeing her after such a long time, she seemed completely run down, enveloped in a negative aura. Intimidated, I couldn't say anything more. Well, it's all in the past. Let's put it all behind us and get along as sisters. I'm going to be living here from now on, so let's get along. However, living back at home, I honestly only felt stress. The main cause was my sister. She had said we should get along, but that promise was never kept. She selfishly continued to live without any concern for the family. Especially towards me, a pregnant woman, she was inconsiderate, making noise late into the night and rarely getting up in the morning, living parasitically off our parents without any shame. Yet she didn't seem to feel guilty at all. Her attitude was summed up in one point. But I'm working, unlike you, Sarah, who's unemployed. It seemed she had a temp job, sticking to a regular schedule. She also had a promise to pay back the money to our parents. This seemed to give her a sense of contributing to the household financially, which in turn made her confrontational towards me, being on leave from work. Even if you're pregnant, you're just an unemployed freeloader, right? Eating and sleeping all day, just wandering around. This is necessary for the baby in my belly. This is the most important time. Yeah, the pregnant lady is always right. Sarah, you've always been a cheater. Snorting disdainfully, my sister glared at my big belly. She seemed annoyed that our parents were more concerned about me. One day, worried, our mother suggested to me, maybe you should explain to Becky that you're on leave from work, not unemployed. If she understands you're working too, maybe her attitude will change. It's okay, Mom. I don't care what sister thinks of me. Bringing it up will just complicate things. I just want to focus on giving birth. I'm worried that she might do something. I understood my mother's concerns, but I didn't want to stress over my sister anymore. The baby was due soon. I wanted to be a strong mother at all times. For that, I couldn't afford to be bothered by my sister's antics. One day, a week before my due date, my husband David came to visit me at my parents' house. He seemed uneasy in someone else's home, but was dressed sharply in a suit. I couldn't help but smile inwardly at my husband's attempt to look good. Nice to meet you, I'm Becky, her sister. My sister, dolled up, approached my husband with a flirtatious tone. She usually didn't wear such heavy makeup to work. She had done up her makeup and was wearing a revealing dress, clearly unsettling David. I stepped in immediately. Sis, don't you have work? David can't stay long. Oh, come on. I finally get to talk to David. He looks so handsome in his suit, seems like a kind man. A far cry from my ex. Hey, don't bring up strange topics here. And David, you earn a lot, right? You're a lawyer, I believe. I've always admired smart people. Seeing the glittering look she gave, it seemed my husband wasn't entirely displeased. He was noticeably stretching his neck to get a better look at my sister's exposed cleavage. I was so dismayed that I smacked him hard on the butt. I sent him straight home. If it was just to see my face, his business was done. Well then, I'm off to work too. As my sister left the house following my husband, I felt a twinge of unease. But I couldn't follow her. More than that, I was feeling utterly exhausted. Later, my mother told me she had personally warned my sister. You shouldn't call your sister unemployed. After that, she accidentally let slip about our household income and David's job. Though she tried to be vague, it seemed clear that my sister saw David as a capable man. In hindsight, I should have been more cautious at that moment. It might have prevented the hurt that followed. A week passed, and I finally went into labor. It was an agonizing day and night. But when dawn broke, I was left with an indescribable happiness. Our long-awaited baby was a little small at 5.7 pounds, but to me, it shone brighter than any jewel. My only concern was that David didn't make it in time for the birth. We had agreed that he would be there, as it was our child. I wanted him to witness the birth, to burn it into his memory. But he arrived at the hospital an hour after the baby was born. When I asked why he was late, he just mumbled, "Sorry, I got held up with work." Barely 5 minutes after him, Becky arrived, and something clicked in my mind. Could it be these two? After accomplishing the huge task of giving birth, I was faced with another issue to deal with. Following that, I was like a demon in my efficiency, all while hiding my deep resentment. Once the postpartum period was over, we decided to have a celebration at my parents' home. We invited a large number of relatives, including David's parents. Becky was there, too, as if nothing was wrong. She was dressed up extravagantly, sticking close to David and exchanging meaningful glances with him. I didn't miss any of it. I have something to tell everyone. As the celebration was in full swing, I stood up. The attendees, flushed from drinking, turned to look at me. It's a joyous occasion, but I have something important to report. As of today, I will be divorcing my husband, David. The relatives' faces were a picture of shock. Only my parents, who I had briefed beforehand, looked somberly at David. He appeared completely clueless. I continued with more details. I'm embarrassed to say, but while I was struggling with pregnancy and childbirth, my husband repeatedly cheated on me. I've obtained evidence from a private investigator. I'll show you photos of him entering a hotel with another woman, and them kissing in the street late at night. And the person he cheated with is my own sister, Becky. With her name called out, all eyes turned to Becky. Her close proximity to David was practically an admission of guilt. Instead of being ashamed, Becky started laughing. "Sarah, you're really bold, aren't you? Exposing your own shame in front of the relatives, saying your husband was stolen right after giving birth, it's a shame that will last a lifetime. I wanted you to realize the extent of your betrayal." Betrayal sounds so harsh. I just fell in love with David. There's nothing wrong with a loving act. How can you even say that? You slept with my husband. And I'll never forget how both of you visited the hospital room while I was giving birth. Correct. I feel sorry for you, so I'll admit it. Yes, while you were giving birth, David and I were making love in a nearby hotel. Sorry that we were making a baby while you were giving birth, haha. Sis, you are unbelievable. What? I'm just admitting what you wanted to hear. Sarah, you were dumped by a husband who earns $300,000 a year. Becky laughed triumphantly and chugged her beer. The relatives around us were speechless with astonishment. Unfazed by the atmosphere, Becky continued. Honestly, I can't stand that a kid like Sarah gets to be with a high-earning husband. In contrast, I'm a beautiful and mature woman, so it's only natural that David would be attracted to me. He even said in bed that he wasn't confident about his life with his wife. I don't want to hear about your affair. Is that sour grapes? You're going to have a hard time now, Sarah. A single mother raising a baby, it's really sad for the child to lose a father because of the mother's selfishness. Sis, be prepared. I intend to demand a substantial amount of compensation from both you and my husband. I won't go easy. I'll make sure you both see hell according to the law. Go ahead. Give me whatever compensation you want. I have a husband who earns $300,000, so $10,000 or $20,000 in compensation won't hurt me at all, right, David? Calling David in a flirtatious voice, he stood beside my sister, his face pale and stiff. His hands were trembling. Becky looked puzzled as she called out to David, but he didn't respond. Then, as our eyes met, he suddenly shouted, "I'm sorry." The one most surprised was Becky, who had been confidently attacking me. "What's going on, David? Why did you apologize?" "I have no other choice but to apologize." "Come on, get it together. You said you'd handle it if it came to a legal dispute with your wife. You're a lawyer, you can take on any lawsuit. I trusted you because you told me to leave everything to you. It was all a lie. I just said whatever came to my mouth." My relationship with Becky was just a fling. At that moment, I decided to reveal my trump card. I pulled out a badge from my jacket pocket and attached it prominently to my chest. The badge bore a design of scales symbolizing equality. Is that what I think it is? Even Becky seemed to understand the meaning of the badge. "Yes, this is a badge allowed only for lawyers. But you're unemployed. I don't know how you misunderstood me as unemployed, but as you can see, I am a lawyer currently on leave. Once my childcare settles down, I certainly plan to return to work." "So the $300,000 income is?" "That was my income before I took leave." "What did my husband tell you? That he's a high-earning lawyer?" "It was just a ruse targeting your body. He's just an office clerk at a law firm, a paralegal. David and I met at our workplace. It was a talked about marriage due to the income disparity, but I always tried to avoid judging people based on their income or status. Please, Sarah, forgive me. It was just a moment of weakness. I was lonely after you went to your parents' house. Of all people, you chose my sister as your affair partner. Being flattered by a lawyer must have felt good, right? Since you enjoyed yourself, it's only fair you face the consequences. We'll divorce, and I'll make sure to get a substantial compensation. You know I'm a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases, right? So, sis, feel free to marry David or keep him as your dependent. I'm no longer interested, but make sure to pay me the compensation. Please, spare me, you're my only sister. I don't want that liar of a man, and I'm still saddled with debt from my previous boyfriend's loans. I have already submitted the complaint to the court. Just wait, that's all." With those words, I left the room. After some time, I successfully divorced my husband, David. He was hesitant until the end, but when I hinted at increasing the compensation, he finally, tearfully, signed the divorce papers. Of course, he knew how skilled a lawyer I was, especially if it came to court. Burdened with a substantial amount of compensation, David seems to be struggling a lot now. Naturally, he was fired from the law firm. A man who cheats while his wife is giving birth is unwelcome in any law office. I hope he reflects and lives more honorably from now on. As for my sister Becky, she too was kicked out of the house and is now wandering without a place to stay. She had already split up with David. I knew most of this because she kept calling my smartphone. According to her, I was deceived. I am the victim. Feeling sorry for her, I referred her to a law firm. If her claim is valid, I'm sure a competent lawyer will help her. Although I doubted she could afford the legal fees. I have returned to work and am handling my responsibilities as before. When I get home, my beloved daughter awaits me. My parents help out, so my life is going smoothly. I'm planning a high-end restaurant for my daughter's birthday with my parents, using the compensation from David and Becky. I'm savoring every moment of my daughter's growth.
Hey, how much was your father's inheritance? It was the night after my father's funeral, and my husband asked me this question with a gleeful smile on his face. The funeral just ended, you know.
But still, we need to clear this up now, or it'll cause trouble later. So how much was there?
Kevin kept asking persistently. Just so you know, it's not just me. My mother and I, and Matt, are the inheritors.
Yeah, I know. So, what's your share, Debbie?
I found the way he talked about shares to be distasteful. Even though I knew he would find out soon enough, I replied, Dad left $3 million in a bank account for me.
$3 million, huh?
He seemed delighted again, which made me feel utterly uncomfortable. The next afternoon, I received a call from Kevin on my smartphone. His voice sounded troubled.
That bank account.
What about that account? Surprised you couldn't withdraw the money? I asked Kevin in a cold tone.
Well, how do I withdraw that money?
Why should I have to tell you that? It seemed Kevin genuinely didn't know that spouses of inheritors have no rights to the inheritance. My name is Debbie Clarkson, a 55-year-old housewife. I have 2 children with my same-aged husband, Kevin, a son named Gary, and a daughter named Lisa. I was born and raised in an ordinary company workers family, went to school, got a job, married, and had 2 children in a very normal way. Kevin and I met at work. I thought I had been walking a perfectly ordinary life. Then 5 years ago, my father was diagnosed with a serious illness at the age of 78. Although he was old and had been healthy until then, the disease was severe and surgery was not an option. However, due to his age, the progression was slow and he might live out his natural lifespan.
I've heard all about the illness. It doesn't seem too serious. He's been healthy till now. All that's left is to wait peacefully for the time to come.
My father said this nonchalantly, leaving our family speechless. When I reported this to Kevin, he said,
How old was your dad? 78? That's not too early. We are in an era of 100-year lifespans. My parents could go any time too. Well, it can't be helped.
As if it was someone else's issue. I thought this response was cold, but realized I might react the same if something happened to my in-laws, so I said nothing. 2 weeks later, my father asked us to gather because he has something to discuss.
I'm fine. It's your parents' matter, right?
But Dad wants you to be there too.
It's probably about leaving some last words or asking to take care of your mom if something happens.
That might be true, but
I'm not good at a mournful scene. I'll stay home that day.
With that, I couldn't insist further and decided to visit my parents' house alone. When I arrived, my brother Matt and his wife Naomi were already there.
What happened to Kevin?
He's not feeling well, so he's staying home today.
I see.
Without saying more, my father commented,
Well, working in food company sales is a busy job, so it's good to let him rest on his days off.
I felt terribly guilty towards my father. The real reason he didn't visit was simply that it felt too troublesome. Then my father started a seemingly incredible story.
What? How much? Could you repeat the amount? $11 million.
Hearing the amount again, all of us were speechless with astonishment. According to my father, 2 years ago, his uncle passed away, leaving him a small inheritance, which he had invested in something.
I put it all in the then emerging cryptocurrencies, thinking it was money I didn't have to begin with, and then... So it increased that much, huh?
What shocked us was not just the amount, but that our elderly father had decided to try cryptocurrencies, something completely unexpected. So what did you do with it?
Well, when it became such a large amount, I decided to shop there, withdrew everything, and converted it to cash.
I was surprised by his decision. I thought people who gambled like that would either keep trying to recover losses, even going into debt, or if they profited, would want to earn more and continue.
I guess my timing to pull out was good. After that, various problems started to arise, but I got out just before then.
Such incredible luck. That's astonishing. I couldn't help but express my genuine reaction. My father just smiled, slightly embarrassed.
So what's the purpose of today's discussion? Well, it's about dividing that inheritance.
Don't talk about such ominous things. We're in an era of 100-year lifespans. It's too early for that. When I said this, my father laughed and replied,
Well, I thought so too, but these are conversations you have while you're still healthy.
I guess that's true.
That's why I wanted to discuss this with you and your partners.
I was surprised again to hear my father use the word partners.
If something happens to me and such an amount of money suddenly appears, what might take the wrong path? And not knowing how to talk to each other's partners might be a problem, right?
Matt and his wife, Naomi, exchanged troubled looks.
So, I want you to be prepared and think about how you'd use it after receiving it. Wait, is this the same father who put all of Uncle's inheritance into cryptocurrencies? Yeah, that's right.
We all laughed at Matt's comment.
In my case, it was really just good luck. Knowing that, I want you to handle it properly. That's why I decided to have this talk.
I understood my father's feelings. My brother, his wife, and I promised to do so, had a meal with our parents, and then went home.
What? The inheritance was such a good deal? Maybe I should have gone too.
When I briefly explained the situation at home, Kevin said this in surprise. That's rude, calling a conversation about inheritance a good deal.
No, but it is, right? And it's a considerable amount of money, isn't it? How much will we get?
I frowned at Kevin's manner of speaking. I don't want to say.
Hey, we're a couple, right? No secrets between us.
If you wanted to know, you should have come too. As I retorted sharply, Kevin scratched his head, looking embarrassed.
No, I was busy and tired from work. Plus, I didn't expect it to be such good news.
Good news? I involuntarily slammed my hand on the table. Is it good news that my father has an incurable disease and we are talking about his inheritance?
No, I'm sorry.
Realizing that I was seriously angry, Kevin quickly apologized.
But hey, your dad's still pretty healthy, right? You said he wanted to talk about it while he's still well.
That's true, but...
The doctor said he could live a normal lifespan if things go well, so wasn't it a good opportunity to have the talk?
I thought maybe he had a point, but my distrust of Kevin didn't fade.
Yeah, I'm sure it must be so. I should also understand your father's feelings and maybe visit to talk again.
I felt more than distrust towards Kevin, who seemed excited about this idea. It was a feeling of discomfort. Following that, Kevin did as he said and started visiting my parents' house more frequently. On holidays, when I or the kids went to visit, he would join us, eagerly waiting even though he used to say he'd stay home and rest. Then one day, Lisa angrily said, I can't stand Dad anymore. That day, Lisa was going to visit Grandpa, and Kevin insisted on accompanying her. Did something happen with Dad? According to Lisa, Kevin had asked my father how much inheritance there was in a conversation, and when my father said,
Well, let's not talk about that. But it's a considerable amount, right? I want to know too. Well, when the time comes, you'll find out. Wait and look forward to it.
And then, guess what Dad said? Then I'll look forward to it, with a laugh. Lisa's eyes welled up with tears of frustration. I, too, was at a loss for words. When I got angry, asking how he could say such a thing, Grandma defended him, saying Dad is an honest man. But that's not honesty, it's just rudeness. True to my mother's words, Kevin is honest in a way. He speaks what's on his mind. He can't say anything contrary to his feelings. A straightforward and good person without duplicity. I liked that about him when we were young. But as we started sharing our lives, I realized that not everything about a person is good.
I'm a person who can't keep secrets. They say honesty doesn't pay, but if that's okay, then I want you with me.
Those were Kevin's proposal words. I was touched back then, but it was just insensitivity, sometimes hurting others. It's not about losing, it's about being disliked, something I gradually realized. But by then, it was too late. Don't let Dad near Grandpa anymore. It's sad for Grandpa. Lisa's tearful plea was unnecessary. I too wanted the same. And so, Kevin began visiting my parents' house only on weekdays when he had work. Eventually, my son and daughter and Matt's 2 daughters got married one after another.
I've seen all my grandchildren's weddings. There's nothing more I wish for.
My father, who struggled for 5 more years, passed away happily. He was 83 years old. Although I had been preparing for it for 5 years, it was still a painful and sad goodbye.
Hey, how much was Dad's inheritance?
It was the night after my father's funeral, and my husband Kevin asked me with a smirking and pleased smile. The funeral has just ended, you know.
But still, we need to clarify these things now to avoid disputes later. So how much was there?
Kevin kept persistently asking. Just so you know, it's not just me. The inheritors are my mother, me, and Matt.
Yeah, I know. So what's your share, Debbie?
Thinking about the way he spoke of shares felt unpleasant to me. Nevertheless, since he would find out soon, Dad left $3 million in a bank account for me.
$3 million?
He again seemed delighted by this, and I felt deeply uncomfortable. After the funeral,
We'll stay at the house tonight. You must be tired from being at the hospital.
Matt and his wife Naomi said, taking care of my mother, so I went back to my house.
You must be tired too. Go ahead and take a bath first and rest.
Kevin was considerate, and I replied, Really? Thanks, then I'll go to bed first. Leaving the cleaning up to Kevin, I decided to go to bed early. The next morning, that's when the incident happened. What's this? On the living room table, there was a single piece of paper. Divorce papers. Huh. It was a divorce form that Kevin had left. Which means, probably, I checked the bag I brought home yesterday inside. Just as I thought. The bank card and account documents containing the $3 million my father left for me were gone. Kevin must have taken them. I had a feeling it would happen. Still, I wanted to believe in my partner one last time, so I deliberately left everything to Kevin and went to bed early. How pathetic. I gave him the last chance. He was the one who ruined it. There's no more mercy to be given. It was still 7 o'clock. I finished my morning preparations and waited for the right time to start making moves. In the afternoon of the day after the funeral, I received a call from Kevin. His voice sounded troubled.
Hello?
What do you want?
That bank account.
What about that bank account? Surprised you couldn't withdraw the money? I asked Kevin in a cold voice. Kevin is simple. I intentionally left the bank card and PIN together, knowing he would think he could withdraw money with it. But the PIN was incorrect. I purposely left PIN that wasn't for the bank account. On the account documents, I wrote that PIN. He must have thought it was the PIN. But entering that number won't authenticate because it's my birthday. Whether Kevin didn't remember my birthday or thought my father made my birthday the PIN, I don't know. It doesn't matter anymore. But as I expected, Kevin thought that was the PIN, the bank card, and the PIN. He must have gone to the bank with it, thrilled to bits. I can't help but find it pitiable and laughable.
How do I withdraw that money?
Why should I have to tell you that?
No, it's just, I thought I'd take that money.
What? I was astounded that he could be so naively honest. Why did you think you could take it?
Well, we're a couple, and that's ours, right? So I thought I'd take this and give you the house.
I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Unfortunately for you, you don't have a single penny of right to that money.
What?
Inherited money isn't joint property in a marriage, so it's all mine.
What? I didn't know that.
Kevin was shouting on the other end of the phone. Apparently, he genuinely didn't know that a spouse of an inheritor has no rights. Thinking of inheriting, or rather snatching an inheritance worth over $1 million? No, that's not it. Didn't he think it necessary to have some knowledge for such a venture? While dreaming his silly adventure, I wish he had at least studied that much. Just like a child in that respect too, and not in a good way. Such trails make it clear he was fundamentally a good person. Honest, straightforward, and without guile. If only he hadn't done something so out of character as trying to snatch someone else's inheritance. Not staying true to himself until the end seems like Kevin's downfall. I was thinking about this listening to him ranting on the phone. What a pitiable man.
Hey, are you listening? Answer me if you can hear me. Hey!
Caught up in my thoughts and not responding, Kevin got irritated and said that. Yes, I'm listening. What were you saying?
Hey, I didn't know you were that kind of person. We're a couple, right? At least give me half, right? Please. Not asking for half. A third is fine. Look, $1 million. I'll settle for $1 million. That should be enough, right?
Kevin's voice was pathetic, almost pleading. Why should I share the inheritance I received from my dear father with an ex-husband?
What?
I've already filled the divorce papers you left. When I informed him, Kevin seemed to freeze on the other end.
You think you can do whatever you want like that?
What's whatever I want? You left it to me. I just filled in my part and submitted it. Is there a problem?
There is. A big one. You can't just file a divorce based on your own arbitrary decision.
It's embarrassing how loudly he's shouting wherever he is. It's not arbitrary. As I said, we both agreed to divorce as a result.
This is absurd.
Who's being absurd here? Anyway, could you come back once? There are things to discuss regarding property division and other matters.
Are you going to split the inheritance with me?
No. I shouted a bit louder than usual at Kevin, who sounded overly excited. It's for the division of property due to our divorce. It's about dividing this house, the shared assets you squandered, and others between us as a married couple. Hearing this, Kevin fell silent. I know about it, you know, how you've been secretly using the savings in our house. Yes, Kevin had been siphoning money little by little from the savings account we had put aside for our retirement. I knew but pretended not to notice. 5 years ago, when Kevin heard about my father's inheritance, he changed. He began to spend money recklessly. He went on trips with his parents, splurged on his colleagues. Though none of it was significant on its own, he removed the limiter he had set for himself, buying whatever he wanted, going wherever he wished. His colleagues, who used to dislike Kevin, began to take advantage of his generosity. Happy with the attention, Kevin spent even more lavishly. Kevin would unhesitatingly withdraw from our shared account whenever he needed more money. Imagining my father's inheritance coming in, he thought such small amounts wouldn't matter. But that was the savings I had scrimped and saved for our retirement. His thoughtlessness, seeing it only as numbers, made me nauseous. For the past 5 years, Kevin lived each day to the fullest like a boy, his eyes sparkling with excitement. His childlike spending disillusioned me. I'd have preferred it if he had spent it on a woman. If you don't come back, I'll report to the police that you stole the bank card. Goodbye. After saying just that, I hung up the phone and turned it off. Later, Kevin obediently returned home and agreed to the property division in front of the children, or rather, was forced to. It seems Kevin planned to retire early with my father's inheritance and travel the world. Dreaming big is fine, but I wanted him to do it on his own merit. He had submitted his resignation at work. It was accepted, but he couldn't receive the full amount of his severance pay. Of course not. It was a sudden resignation on his own terms. Moreover, even that amount was subject to property division, so he couldn't keep all of it. Out of kindness, I decided to buy the house we lived in. Of course, for half the price, Kevin's share. The mortgage was already paid off, so transferring the money and changing the ownership was all that was needed to complete the sale. After buying the house, I had him return the money he used from our shared assets and took half of his severance pay. Kevin was left with hardly any money. Early retirement was out of the question. He needed to find a job to live. Kevin tearfully asked for a second chance, but I had no intention of agreeing. For these 5 years, Kevin dreamt of the day he would inherit. He happily made various plans for that day, filling his bookshelf with travel books about trips around the world. If he were a boy, I might have fondly watched him dream of traveling the world one day, but all his dreams were built on the day my father would pass away. I had no intention of hiding my feelings or counting down the days with such a person for the rest of my life. Kevin brought this upon himself. I hope he finds a new dream to live for. A dream where, just like before, my presence is unnecessary. After the divorce, I sold the house we had lived in for a long time. There was a part of me that wanted to keep living there, but I sold it considering Kevin might loiter around. I also moved my mother and children. You never know when Kevin might turn to them for help. As a minimum contact, they only have Gary's phone number. Sometimes he calls crying, but Gary just listens and hangs up. He got a transfer through his company and now lives in a provincial city. It's impossible for Kevin to rely on Gary for anything now. Lisa and her husband, who runs his own business and can work from anywhere, moved to a place they were interested in. My mother and I bought a house near my daughter and her family. Now I sometimes take care of my grandchildren, my mother's great-grandchildren, and lead a relaxed life. By the way, about the world trip Kevin dreamt of, I could go on it, couldn't I? When I mentioned it, my mother also expressed her desire to go. We're planning a leisurely cruise trip soon. Of course, bringing my father's photo along. A semi-retired, fulfilling life. I have to thank Kevin for showing me such a wonderful possibility.
Since I feel sorry for you, sis, I've come up with a good thing. A good thing. Yes. So, watch this, okay? Dressed in a wedding gown, the younger sister casually took a microphone from the staff. To everyone's surprise, she boldly announced to the guests at the venue, "Here's my low-educated, older sister. Anyone willing to take her?" She looked at me triumphantly, smiling smugly. But she was oblivious to the huge mistake she was making. The atmosphere in the hall began to shift, and cold stares were directed at my sister. Unaware of this, she gripped the microphone again. "Come on, sis, you need to be more proactive. There are lots of doctors here, you know?" "You're done for." What? Right after that, an incredible bombshell was dropped on my sister. My name is Michelle Collins, and I'm 29 years old. Just an ordinary working adult. But I have one unusual part of my background. I became a lawyer despite only having a middle school education. I have a younger sister who is 2 years my junior. She's been adored by our family since childhood because of her good looks and charm. As for me, I'm average in looks and build, and not particularly charming. Treated coldly by family and relatives, I focused all my efforts on studying. Though it never seemed to surpass my sister's charm. Our parents doted only on Stephanie, ignoring me. Initially, it was painful, but I couldn't dwell on it forever. Giving up on gaining my parents' love, I devoted myself even more to my studies. Studying was something that never betrayed me. The effort I put in always showed tangible results. I hoped that one day, my academic achievements might earn my parents' praise. With this faint hope, I continued my studies. Throughout middle school, I consistently topped the exams. But during the 9 years from elementary to middle school graduation, my parents never once praised me. Father and mother threw these words at me. "Ranking high is meaningless if your scores aren't high." That's right. 95 isn't enough for science. But this test was really tough. All you have are excuses? It's because you're not trying hard enough. Such a bad attitude. Don't show us your report card unless it's perfect. Yes, I'm sorry. No matter how hard I tried, my parents never acknowledged me. Instead, they criticized me for not scoring perfectly. But what hurt me the most wasn't their scorn. It was the words from my sister after enduring harsh words from our parents. "Oh? Did you get scolded again, big sis?" Without knocking, Stephanie entered my room, picked up my report card, and chuckled. "Big sis, you got such good scores and still got scolded? Poor you." I get praised just for not failing. Did you come here just to say that? I was worried about you, big sis, so I came to check on you. But to be spoken to like that, I'm shocked. Worried? If you were really worried, I don't think you'd talk like that. Sigh. That's your problem, you know? You lack charm, and that's why Dad and Mom don't love you. Stephanie looked down at me with disdain and left the room. Right after, I could hear her laughing joyfully with our parents in the living room. Even though I should be used to this by now, Tears started to spill out unexpectedly. I had decided not to expect anything from my parents, not to take Stephanie's words seriously. Yet here I am. Before I knew it, I was crushing the report card in my hand. I studied hard, planning to get a job as soon as possible and leave this house. I was determined to do my best at everything I could for that goal. With this decision in my heart, I became even more dedicated to my studies. Then, in the autumn of my 3rd year of middle school, my father told me a shocking truth. Michelle, you're not going to high school. You'll work instead. What? Dad. What are you talking about? It's obvious, isn't it? It's a waste to spend money on you. If you really want to go to high school, earn the money yourself. That's impossible. I'm still a middle schooler. I can't even work part-time. Then give up. Your mother and I decided to spend our money only on Stephanie from now on. So, there's no money for you. That's so unfair. I felt darkness envelop me at my father's words. My mother and sister looked on, smirking at me standing frozen in place. Now as an adult, I understand. There were ways to continue education, like schools with waived tuition or scholarships. But back then, I didn't have that knowledge. Crushed by the reality that I couldn't go to high school, I lost my motivation to study. My teacher said it was a waste for someone with my grades not to advance. But with my parents firmly against it, I gave up on further education and started working at a factory upon graduation. Since I couldn't live on my own due to my age, I worked desperately until I turned 18. When I turned 18, I planned to leave this house immediately. My parents demanded I contribute to the household expenses, so I gave them half of my salary. I saved the rest, enduring a painful 3 years. On the day I turned 18, I left the house. I left a note and walked out of that house full of unpleasant memories, head held high. Ironically, there was no contact from my parents or Stephanie. Not a call or even a single message. At first, I felt sad, but as I got busy with work, I gradually cared less about my family. Surprisingly, being away from home, my stress disappeared, and I found peace. That's when I decided to give studying another try. After a 3-year break, I started with reviews, and soon the joy of learning returned. I could study without feeling burdened. As I began using high school textbooks, I also developed a habit of reading a lot, which eventually led to an interest in law. Reading law books, I aspired to become a lawyer. However, with only a middle school education, becoming a lawyer seemed like an unreachable dream. Curiously, I discovered that even a middle school graduate could take a preliminary examination to qualify for the bar exam. Since then, I studied harder than ever. I studied at home and even during breaks at work, learning legal terminology while eating lunch. Fortunately, my coworkers, mostly older than me, supported my efforts. At 23, I passed the bar exam. I then left the factory to work at a law firm. After 4 years of hard work at the law firm, I set up my own practice 2 years ago. Now, I'm a consulting lawyer for a hospital, living a fulfilling life. Yet, sometimes I wonder, if I tell my parents about my success as a lawyer, would they be happy? Perhaps now, I might gain their recognition. Such thoughts aren't entirely absent from my mind. Still, in the end, I haven't contacted my parents. I never thought I'd have anything to do with them again. But contrary to my expectations, the day of reunion came much sooner than anticipated. When I returned home from work, I found a message from my sister Stephanie on my smartphone, saying, "I'm getting married." Since leaving home at 18, I had never received any communication from my family. So I had to look twice to believe it. Stephanie is getting married? It seems my sister, now 27, is going to marry a doctor. The message was about the wedding next month, asking me to attend. though I was reluctant to meet Stephanie and my parents again. I felt awkward about missing a family wedding without a good reason. So I replied to Stephanie that I would attend. After that, Stephanie sent only the date and location. At the end of her message, she cheekily added, "Don't forget the wedding gift, okay?" Probably Stephanie didn't really want me there, she was likely just after the gift. She must think there's no need to reciprocate a family member. I resolved to make this wedding the last time I ever see my family. With that firm decision, I prepared for Stephanie's wedding. On the day of the wedding, a month later, I wore a blue party dress and headed to the reception venue. After registering, I sat in the family area, where my father and mother were already seated. Upon seeing me, they chuckled and said, "Surprised you showed your face here. With your low income from working in a factory." Exactly. It's embarrassing to introduce you as family. We shouldn't have even invited her. I said the same. But, at least we'll get a gift, she said. How can they have such a conversation while I'm right here? I thought telling them about my current situation might repair our relationship a bit. But that faint hope crumbled quickly. Without exchanging a word with my parents, I remained seated. Looking around, I noticed a few familiar faces in the groom's area. Wait. Isn't that person? And the one beside them, I think I've seen them before too. Could it be? When I checked the groom's name, sure enough, it was exactly as I had imagined. This is such an incredible coincidence, I thought, but decided it was best not to make a scene today. I managed to calm myself down, alone. The wedding proceeded with the bride and groom's entrance, speeches from guests, and various performances. Then came the time for photos, including the meal. My parents left their seats to join the bride and groom. Clinging to Stephanie, they smiled broadly for several photos. Ignoring all that, I continued eating in silence until Stephanie approached me. "Hey, sis, long time no see. Are you having fun?" "Yes. The food is very delicious. You're a poor factory worker, so you don't get to eat like this often, right? You should be grateful." What? Are you sulking? Sorry. But I guess you're just jealous, right? Your little sister is marrying a doctor. Sorry, my foot. She doesn't mean it. I deliberately ignored her, but she whispered in my ear. Since I feel sorry for you, sis, I've come up with a good thing. A good thing. Yes. So, watch this, okay? Dressed in a wedding gown, the younger sister casually took a microphone from the staff. To everyone's surprise, she boldly announced to the guests at the venue, "Here's my low-educated, older sister. Anyone willing to take her?" What? Hey, what are you saying? She's poor and has no income, but anyone willing to take her? Stephanie looked at me, smirking triumphantly. Unbelievably, my parents joined in her mockery, saying, "Please, do take her." That was the moment. The string that had been stretched tight for so long finally snapped. What is this? How much more will they ridicule me? And at a celebration like this? It's unbelievable. Well then, it's time to show them reality. The room started buzzing, and cold stares were directed at Stephanie. Oblivious to it all, she gripped the microphone again. "Come on, sis, you need to be proactive. There are lots of doctors here, you know?" "You're done for." "What?" "You'll soon realize the awful thing you've done." "Wah, what are you talking about?" "I was thinking of you when I—" At that moment, the groom intervened. "Wait, please. What do you mean you're leaving?" I turned towards the voice and saw To my surprise, that the groom's workplace colleagues were all standing up, about to leave. A man, who seemed to be the hospital director, firmly said to the desperate groom, "I'm sorry, but after what the bride just said, I feel incredibly offended. We're leaving for today." "Wait, please." I admit her remarks were inappropriate. "I'll talk to her about it." "It's not about that. Don't you know who her sister is?" "Eh?" "No, I just met her today. All I know is that she's a middle school graduate working in a factory." "Don't be ridiculous. Her sister is a respected lawyer, our hospital's legal advisor." "What? Our hospital's legal advisor?" Not just the groom, but Stephanie and our parents were stunned. Yes, the hospital where I serve as a legal advisor was the very place where Stephanie's fiancé worked. I had met some of the groom's guests before, and they seemed to recognize me too. My sister's thoughtless comments had provoked the hospital director's anger. Since the groom was just one of the doctors, he had no direct connection with me. But to the director and others, a legal advisor is a significant figure. Realizing this, the groom, his face red with anger, confronted Stephanie. "Hey. What have you done? Because of you, my reputation is ruined." "No, it's not like that. I didn't know my sister was a lawyer." "That's no excuse. How can you say such things about your own sister so casually? You're the lowest. I'm disappointed in you." "Wait, please. There are reasons behind this. I don't want to hear excuses. Forget about the marriage." "What?" Stephanie's face turned pale, and she collapsed on the spot. The groom, furious, left the venue with the guests. As I was about to leave, Stephanie screamed from behind me, "Do something, big sis." To her, I said firmly, "Do something? Why should I? You reaped what you sowed. You failed trying to get laughs at someone else's expense, and now you're playing the victim? Disgusting." "What? Why would you say that? If only you had told me you were a lawyer. Why should I tell anything to someone who never contacted me? I plan to cut ties after this wedding anyway. But good for me, I got to see your pathetic face one last time. Sorry about losing your doctor husband, huh? Good luck finding your next one." With that, I left the venue. The fading voices were of guests condemning Stephanie and our parents. As expected, Stephanie's marriage was called off. My parents, who had hoped for a secure future through her marrying a doctor, were furious at her for the first time. Stephanie, never scolded before, seemed broken and reached out to me for help. But of course, I ignored her. Ignoring her repeated calls, I erased all family contacts. Stephanie had already quit her job for marriage, now unemployed. Her relationship with our parents worsened, and she spends her days shut in her room. As for me, I'm living a stable and fulfilling life. Both my work and personal life are going well, without any major dissatisfaction. Though not blessed with a good family, I'm fortunate in my work and the people around me. All this is the result of my efforts. There were tough days, but I'm glad I persevered. I acknowledge my efforts and want to continue living my life comfortably.